Stuff doesn't matter. Hey, good afternoon, friends. Bill here. Hope you're having a good week. Having a good week here. Having a good one here. How's the week going? Anybody out there preaching this week? Got any good stories to tell? I told you it's amazing. We were having our prayer call Monday night. 7 o'clock, you don't know what goes on. And text prayer to hang on a second. That's it. 53445, and you'll get the link to join the prayer call. But anyway, so Joe Toy was talking about being at UNC, and kids, 1, 2, 5 or so, maybe up to 10 of the students are responding to the gospel, praying and weeping in these things, which is, it's not about that exactly. It's just their convictions going on. Kids talking to them about really coming to faith in Christ. Not even Joe said money. They really didn't understand how to do it. They'd been in a church and so forth. So, and then yesterday afternoon on our George Whitfield call, Will Dietrich and Joe Henson talking about being at the campus of TWU and UNT, and kids responding. Man, I mean, students are responding. It sounds like the Lord's working as usual, but in a more assertive way. That's certainly what we pray for, that there's more assertive work here, more work of the Spirit to bring salvation. And so it's exciting. It's exciting to hear. I'm sure I don't hear all the stories out there, of course, but I'm sure there's a lot of good ones going on. Heath, how you doing? So, Heath, have you been to Wisconsin, Oshkosh, or Madison yet? That's where Heath goes and preaches there in Wisconsin. So it's going good. And then, this weather's warming up where we getting out. I know that Ridge Saplita and Sterling Long were at the Saturday UGA game. It's the spring game. They probably had a ton of folks there. I saw some pictures. So, yeah, man, it's going. Things are going good. I'm going to see if I can post Heath this. Let's see. I'm going to see if you can't. Here's our Instagram page, and click on that and follow us there, and see other guys that are on that page as well. Twitter as well is it's a little bit different. There's really more ministry stuff on Instagram, but I like using Twitter as well, just to post our stuff as well. So if you're not following us on Instagram or Twitter, then do it and see what's going on out there. I think we're going to get better at reporting stories on a continual basis. You've probably seen the morning 1 to 5 minute videos there talking about the sporting events coming up, trying to get that rolling, get ahead of the curve. So trying to do better at posting all these things. It's an amazing amount of details that happen here. So I'm excited. I'm excited about it. We're going to post this. Let's see what he says. It's great to be back at University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh. Had several conversations encouraging students to believe in the gospel. The amazing thing about getting out and preaching is that things happen when the gospel is preached. Things seen and things unseen. It's kind of automatic. You just go out there and do it. That's our Twitter page as well. Follow us on those as well. And we're going to try to say on our old friend Facebook. I guess this shows up on Facebook. But follow us there on Facebook. Those are the 3 main outlets. And also we started, we're a registered charity in Canada now. And so Michael up there is also starting to post things on our Twitter account in Canada. If you know anybody in Canada, tell them to tag into that. So things are going good. We're off and running. Next week is the NFL draft in Kansas City. Got a good group going so far. 5, hopefully 7 or 8 of us will be there as well. And looking forward to that. I haven't been there, as you heard me say before. But there's still room if you want to join us. 3 days of preaching. These events have been really big. The NFL draft is something new that the NFL started. The reason I give this context is to if I say it's a really big event, how did it get big? What goes on out here? They used to have these drafts. They always had them in New York City, and at Madison Square Garden. And then, of course, being the master marketers that they are, and they do a good job at it, they started to take them around the country. Hang on one second. And the goal, of course, is to get their name out there. And so they put a lot of time and energy into it. There are a lot of things that hinge around the draft happening, not only the draft itself, but like the schedule comes out after the draft. We go to preach in the UK. Heath was there last fall, Heath and Dan, and that schedule comes out around the draft. So these guys are good at, fine tuning the schedule to put a lot of pressure and emphasis on things they do. So the draft should be a really good event. Hey, listen, one thing we try to accomplish is to go in there, really, invade the city as well with the gospel and get a feel for the city. That'll happen the following week in Miami around the Miami Grand Prix, of course, in Louisville around the Kentucky Derby. So there's so much that happens when we go in. That's one reason we work to put together a team to bring in some spiritual weight, if you will. And in that process, we are able to impact the city to a certain level. We meet other people along the way, talk to pastors. We send out postcards and stuff talking about what we're doing. We're trying to bring a consciousness, if you will, to the Great Commission. I think that's one thing I want to talk about right this second is the Great Commission. It's really a fascinating consideration in life. I'm 60, and as I've gotten older, I've noticed certain things. And when you get older, you don't have to, but you can look at things differently. Like older age gives you a different look at life when there's less time in front of you and you've passed more time versus when you're 20 and the whole life seems to be ahead of you. And one thing I think that happens with all of us as sinners is that we're self-centered. That's a human way to say that we perceive ourselves to be godlike, knowing good and evil, which was the great temptation in the garden. I think there's also a level, this is going to be a pretty harsh word maybe, but we're narcissistic at a certain level. Like we do what is good for us. And some of that language is in the culture. Like you hear people say, well, I'm going to do what's good for me and my family. Some of these athletes, I'm going to sign the contract that's good for me and my family. That's, while we understand what they're saying, it's still, there's some narcissism there, this focus on ourselves so much. And typically, even in business, and many years ago I got an MBA, and I heard a lot of these kind of stories, but businesses are oftentimes narcissistic as well. Like they seem to exist only for themselves. They do a mediocre job putting out a product. And you start to see, when you look at life and you use that word narcissistic, which means focused on ourselves, what I can get on it, the attention I can get out of it, things like that, then it helps you kind of look at life a little bit differently. And even in business, companies that are outward facing, focus on customer service, delivering a good product in a good way, like Chick-fil-A is the most recent example of a retail shop, they explode. One reason they explode is because companies that focus on the customer are really, they tap into that, that Jesus says the greatest among you shall be a servant. They tap into our desire to serve and also our desire to be served, in a sense, like it's impactful. It means something. Someone cares about people like that. And so do it. And if you can maintain it, you can be an outstanding customer. I was reading this book, I might have said this last week, called Good to Great. It's an old book, but the guy was talking about Walgreens and how Walgreens basically outlasted Eckerd in the drugstore wars. Which this discussion was, the book's 20 years old, the discussion was from the 70s. But what Walgreens wanted to do was to be accessible to their customers. And in 1 square mile in a big city, they had 9 stores. They were trying to minister to serve their customer base. And that one idea, of course, they did it well, really propelled Walgreens into a successful company. And there are a bunch of them right here where I'm at. I mean, they're all over the place. They do a good job. Dollar General. If you have Dollar Generals around you, they locate those things. They have a certain way they serve. And so you start to understand that companies that thrive really have a customer service. Their outward focus is the people, not themselves. And there are companies that are very inward focused, and they ultimately collapse. Churches, any human organization that is outward focused does a good job. You go into some churches and there's this, no, you're like a ghost when you walk in, when you visit. Other places, there's a lot more interaction. But so you can start to look around and see, I'm going to say there's this high level of narcissism that exists in us And only the gospel really delivers us from this narcissistic tendency that we all have. And here's what I want to say about the church. In a sense, it's just an observation, but it's when we as the body, we let's just say we we're talking about a health, an orthodox doctrine, people who are saved and so forth. What our greatest attention is to us and our own collective congregation. We're getting it. We're in the narcissism realm. I'm just going to overstate it a little bit to make a point, because what happens is when people like me come along and say, "Hey, come join us to reach other people," then there's this, no, I'm not going. Like, I'm not going to do what is not beneficial for me. What does Jesus say? When you put on a feast, invite the crippled, the lame, the blind, and so forth. Invite those people who can't pay you back. And that's kind of what evangelism is tapping into this selflessness, this serviceness. When we're reaching people, they can do absolutely, in one sense, nothing for us. We don't go out there for them to do something for us. And this is the Great Commission at large. Go into all the world, proclaim Christ to the world, the broke, the sinner, the sick, the blind, the crippled, the lame, the paralyzed, the deaf, the dumb, the mute. Their faith in Christ doesn't, in a sense, he doesn't gain, like he doesn't get more out of it, in a sense. It's the selflessness of his service to mankind that we're proclaiming, that he laid down his life as a ransom for many. And we proclaim his selfless act in there. Now he sits at the right hand, he has this immense authority, but he was completely turned out in his ministry. It's an interesting thing with God when you talk about God being worshipped, and how does God demand us to worship him without any sense of a narcissism, shall we say. But there's this purity when we worship God that we get that we don't have, we do other things. But I want to just say to the body that the Great Commission calls us to turn from our narcissism, our selflessness. What's in it for me? I'm going to do what's best for me and my family, and turn and seek to preach the gospel to people who cannot help me, especially in the United States and the West, when you get such mediocre response, ho-hum response. In other countries where they, when you get, I've been in South Africa before. We went to some of the villages, and the people there they just flocked out, and you have this sense, wow, this is really going well. But we can talk about that later. I just want to say, in the United States, when we get engaged in the Great Commission, we're entering this realm that Jesus describes. Invite people in. We're leaving our selfishness behind. We're leaving our narcissism behind, and we're moving into the realm of, I'm going to go and knock on my neighbor's door when I would rather do something else. I'm going to go spend time in my neighborhood visiting the sick, even though I got other things that I want to do. And I think that's what we're missing here. And so this is what we want to really press forward on, is what is the Great Commission? It forces us to turn from our self-centeredness, even our Christian narcissism, to go out and preach the word to people, even if they don't believe. So we're not motivated by their response to us, motivated by Christ motivating us. You see, this is what the Great Commission does. This is why I think we have such a hard time getting people to go. When you have 50,000 people downtown at a festival and people go, nah, then they ask those questions like, hey, does it really work? Well, what happens? They're asking questions like, they're not faith questions. They're like the doubtful questions. Now, I think we have a lot to contend with here. I think there's stages in the life of the church. You've got to get strong. We've needed to get strong. We've had some internal battles going on, but those are kind of waning. And right here, right now, I think is our opportunity to go out, to turn from our narcissism, even our justified narcissism, to go out into the highways and hedges, to knock on doors. I'm going to tell you what, friends, these people need us out there. These people that are trapped in these sins, I certainly know they're responsible for their sin. Sin is passed down to the third, fourth generation of people that hate God, all that stuff. It's part of the system. It's the unintended consequences of being a sinner. And hey, man, it's serious out there. But despite that, we go and see. What I'm saying is that these people need us to be there. Because if we don't go, the media's not preaching Christ to the people. If these people aren't coming into the church, And they're not coming into churches that we probably approve of if they're doing it. You see, guys like us, based on what we believe, we need to go. And we need to get people to go with us. And we need to put a lot of pressure on people to go. Not, human pressure, but we need to put consistent, repetitive pressure on people. We need to go. The church needs to turn from being insular, focused on the things inside only, to doing both. Great Commission and taking care of business at home. And that actually makes us healthier in our faith. I think the word narcissism is good. I think we have to get delivered of this how we justify our self-centeredness, and how we find a ton of reasons to complain about the color of the carpet and other things instead of going out. One more point or so, and we'll move on to the events. But you see it in businesses who focus outwardly, focus on growing. There's a natural byproduct out of making the inner workings stronger, more efficient, more effective. But if they're focused on the inside, that doesn't work outwardly. You have to push outward to be strengthened on the inside. Like lifting a weight, you push out to have your muscles strengthened. So I think we need to really take hold of this, to look ourselves in the eye and call the church to let's go. Let's go. We need to get out there with the people. They need us out there. Their actions tell us they're drowning in their sin. And if we're going to be a merciful, charitable people, we must keep going. We must go. God is working, and we cannot make excuses and say, well, whatever it is, our excuse is. Anyway, that's my message for the day, my whatever you want to call it. But I'm excited about going next week to Kansas City. That's all that was to lead up to this. We're going to Kansas City. We're going to Miami. We're going to Louisville to bring the gospel to people. We have an idea what's coming, but we're going anyway. I'm looking for guys to go, guys that really want to get up and say, you know what, I'm to whatever, I'm to this or I'm to that, meaning I'm not going to put words in your mouth of why you won't go, but I'm looking for guys who are saying, yeah, you know what, I want to go. I hear what Bill's saying. I hear the message. I see the Great Commission. I see the work of Jesus. I see the Apostle Paul. Let's go and just lay down all the toys of life so we can get out there and preach the gospel to people. The Lord Jesus deserves us to go. So 3 events in the next really 2 weeks: NFL draft next weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and after that, May 4 to 7, basically on the same days as the Miami Grand Prix and the Kentucky Derby. Let me throw these up. I have the links for these events. Here's the draft. And the Derby. A good crowd coming to the Derby. Looks like good crowd coming to the Derby. It was a good one, Heath. We'll see. We'll see. Heath, is it too late to join up with Keep Your Finger in the Text? Yeah, so Heath Pusel is teaching on Tuesday nights. Keep your finger in the text. I'm gonna see if he says if it's too late or still can join up, and then also taking reps. Taking reps is Monday night. And taking reps is really, once you sort of see what the structure is on what Heath teaches at Keep Your Finger in the Text, it's really coming in there and focusing on writing sermons, coming up with sermons, a collected group of guys coming together and talking about it. by all accounts, the guys that join up on Taking Reps on Monday night love it. That's what that link is right there. Taking Reps. The first link is keep your finger in the text. And if you're not engaged in this, I want to encourage you to do that, because it's what we're doing to that's what we're doing to teach expository preaching, basically. And the key thing here in this, if you've never heard about it or wonder what it is, it's really a disciplined process to come into a text in any book of the Bible, and the goal is to see what that text is saying. What is God saying through that text? It's a process to eliminate our bias and denominational bias, eschatological bias, all that kind of stuff, to come to the pure message that is in the text. That's what is going on here. And then you connect that message to the gospel as well. And you connect that message to the gospel as well, and you in a legit way according to the text. And man, it's really catching on. Heath does a great job teaching it. And I think you got about 15 guys, don't you, this for this session. Plus, I think about 6 guys in the Taking Reps. So it's going good. So check out those links and see what's going on. And, and it's never too late. Listen, we want you out there preaching, obviously. I want you preaching sermons. So plug in with Heath. You can contact Heath. Ask him about it. And the summer workshop, that's right, will be coming up after the George Whitefield training. If you want to reach Heath, there's his email right there. Just ask him questions about it, man. It's time to take action is now, my friends. The time to take action is right now. We also want to go over some other events here. We've got I think here's what I'm going to do here is this link has all the upcoming events on it, or they all should be there. We've got several gospel invasions coming up. June 1 to 4 is Jason McGow's leading an outreach at Myrtle Beach. June 2 to 4, Brad Madewell is leading outreach at Riverbend Festival in Chattanooga, Tennessee. June 15 to 18, Terry Cohea is leading one at Bonnaroo Music Festival in Manchester, Tennessee. The George Whitefield Fellowship Conference is June 19 to 23. Coming up, MLB All-Stars, July 8 to 11th in Seattle. And the Music City Grand Prix, August 4 to 6 in Nashville. Circleville Pumpkin Fest, October 18 to 21. Joshua Richards is leading that. And also he's got one. Yeah, he says there's 18 guys in the Taking Reps class and 17. Keep your finger in the text. The only event that's not on the events link is the Indy 500, and Joshua Richards is leading that. We'll throw that link up there as well, and you can join those guys, and pretty soon that'll be on the events page link as well. So lots of opportunity to get out there and preach the word. Again, I was thinking, what are we doing here? And while we put together the events, we're certainly trying to encourage everyone to preach. And the times we spend together, the fellowship of it all really seems to accentuate everyone enjoying it and just continuing on to preach. It takes a lot of discipline to preach by yourself all the time. And so coming together for a couple of days with some other guys seems to be something that everybody really enjoys. And so that's kind of the goal there. When we say, hey, can you go to 3 days? You say, well, the point is, probably about 50,000 people every day, 50 to 100,000 people every day, plus the fellowship, everybody. Just really it's edifying. It's helps build us up. I think a local pastor that Charles and Mona Lotta referred, they're going to come talk to us Friday morning. I've also, through Dr. Tom Johnson, emailed Dr. John Allen there at the Midwestern Seminary to see if they will come out and we can visit with them. I think apparently those guys go out and evangelize as well. And so that's kind of why we do it. What's going on with John Crowley? What's going on with John Barros? So that's kind of what we do. So if you've never heard all this before, that's what the point is, to come together and preach. Again, you have to get into this. I was talking to somebody this morning, and when you start evangelizing, the thing that has to happen is getting an event once a week on your calendar. You have to start getting your calendar converted, and then add another event. You have to get into it. It's very difficult to be half-hearted about this. You have to really find the niche where you can immerse yourself to the level you can, and then keep that commitment. So this is what we are showing you like the depth of a commitment. 4 days, 3 days in Kansas City, or 3 days in Louisville, or 3 days in Miami. It's the same thing. You're getting in and making that commitment and getting deeper into the work, and that helps you when you get home, for sure. John, what's going on with John Barrows? Anything you want to share? The death score is terribly abusive. All right, John Barrows preaches in Orlando at an abortion facility there. He's been there for 10 years or so, and it's a raucous crowd down there, that's for sure. So please keep praying for John Barrows. He gets a lot of people coming by to help him, so pray for John there as well. Heath, what else can we share today? Anything else to share, you think? Well, that's sort of it for this day. I want to encourage you to let me go over one more thing while we're sitting here. Woodfield Fellowship Conference coming up, June 19 and 23. We'll talk about that. And look, here's the deal on the Whitfield conference. What's the point of the George Whitfield program? Where it's just a further extension of taking this whole process deeper. It is designed for men who want to be vocational evangelists. We do two things there. He teaches keep your finger in the text, because we're preaching sermons, and I'm teaching the track that talks about really your personal life, getting it organized and ordered, and doing the things necessary to be a full-time vocational evangelist. That includes just details like um, the dreaded word fundraising. That's not the right word, but that encapsulates what we're talking about. We're not going to tell you all the secrets of raising money. We're going to talk about it, but talk about it so it gets organized so you can do it consistently. We're going to talk about, your role as an evangelist in your community. We're going to talk about interacting with other people so you get this vision of what the role of the evangelist looks like when you're full-time. Excuse me. You see this in the biography of George Whitfield. I think you have to get a deep perspective of what you're doing so you can, right, born again book, that's right. So you can get a good perspective on what you're doing. You have to have a deep conviction here to persevere in this work, because everything kind of runs against you. Even people in the church are against you, the world's against you, and all these things. So you have to have a really deep conviction that that you have this calling, but also a deep conviction that drives you forward. The love of Christ is a deep conviction. Sinners not knowing God's a deep conviction. These things must really come to the fore in your heart when you're going to preach more. It has to be a deep experience for you. Just while we all enter this on a certain level, it has to get deeper in your own person. And we talk about that, presenting a vision of full-time vocational evangelists that is the full depth from the way the scripture describes it, the way George lived. I think it's important to hold of this. You look at yourself differently, and you begin to interpret life a little bit differently. You also step in the realm of leading your family and leading them significantly. I mean, it's a big job, and the bigness of the job oftentimes overwhelms guys, and you just sort of shrink back from it. So I present this vision of what it looks like, so you can step forward into this really over a 12-month period and stick with it the rest of your life. This is why we're constantly teaching, preaching, keep your finger in the text, constantly teaching that as well, so you can get a constant vision that you are a preacher when you're preaching, and you will put the time and effort into it to get out there and preach the word as well. One more. Dr. Sean McKeever is teaching us. Where's the link? Is teaching us from his Born Again book about George Whitfield. Let's see here. That's the book right there. He wrote this book, if you've not seen it, and it's the Evangelical Theology of Conversion of John Wesley and George Whitefield. And it's a technical book. It's a great book because it tells you exactly what both guys were doing and saying. For instance, when they talk about repentance, repenting from what to what, they differ. And some of it would be obvious to us, but when you're talking about two of the greatest evangelists ever, uh, what do they do? What do they think? How do they look at this whole situation? I think again, it's another step and being good at being an evangelist, having some depth to you about how you understand how evangelism works. So Dr. Sean McKeever, this is him. We talked to him last week. He's teaching the class. He wrote it. We're doing it Thursdays at 4 p.m. And so if you want to come and join us on the live video teaching he does, then text me, just email. Here's what you do. Send an email. Just saying. Just all you got to do is say born again class. Send an email to that, and you will get the link to come on board and join us on Thursdays at 4. It's really interesting. It's like I said, I personally find that the depth, like studying theology, studying the scriptures, all these things really give us some depth that some of our other friends out there that preach don't really have. And I think having this understanding of what's in this book, how these guys preached, how they thought about it, is really helpful. It's another step of moving forward in the depth of the situation. Dr. McKeever's a scholar here, George Whitefield scholar, and there are a handful of guys that are Whitefield scholars. Dr. Tommy Kidd, who's actually Midwestern Seminary. Arnold Dallimore, he's deceased. Dr. David Bevington has written about him. There's some other books out there about Whitefield. It's not a big universe, and so he's in that realm, and so he's read all the stuff, and he knows what's going on with Whitefield. I think we align more certainly with Whitefield theologically, but nevertheless, the book is really good to hear what he has to say, hear the background of Whitefield and so forth. So if you want to sign up and come in and join us for the class, it's an hour long every Thursday for the next 5 weeks from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Send me an email. Our friends, listen, what a great day. Look, send me a message if I can help you, 423-724-7500. Text me, call me. If you're putting on an event, you want us to promote it, I'd be glad to do that. If we can help you meet somebody, you move to town. One gentleman that our old friend Chike knew has moved down to Texas, so I was able to introduce him to a couple guys over there, Will and Joe. If you want to meet some guys that are out there preaching with us, just send me a message and tell me who's in this area, all that kind of stuff. So I'm here to help you, here to serve you. Like I said, the love of Christ compels me to be here to serve you and help you get out there and preach the word as much as possible. So if I can be a resource, or Heath, let us know. Be glad to chat with you. Listen, thanks for tuning in. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.